Hello, viewers. Today we're going to tell you a story that is hard to believe, but every word of it is true. It's the story of a quiet man, a man who looked ordinary. He went to work, paid his bills, went to church, and smiled at his neighbors. But behind that calm face was one of the most terrifying serial killers in American history. This is the horrifying case of Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. He wasn't the kind of killer who wanted to be famous. He didn't brag, he didn't leave clues. Instead, he hunted silently for nearly 20 years. And by the time police caught him, he had taken the lives of at least 48 women, maybe more. So sit back, but stay alert, because this story will take you deep into the darkness, where monsters hide in plain sight. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the most chilling true crime stories on this channel. Now let's begin. Washington State, the early 1980s. A cool mist rolls over the Green River, winding silently through the trees outside Seattle. It's peaceful, serene, but below the surface of this calm water lies a horror story the world didn't see coming. In July 1982, two young boys riding their bikes made a terrible discovery near the riverbank. A woman's body floating face down in the water, and just a few feet away, another one. Both were young, both had been strangled, both were thrown into the river like they didn't matter. That moment would spark a manhunt that would span decades. No one could have guessed that behind it all was a soft-spoken man with a calm voice and a job painting trucks. A man who prayed in church on Sundays. A man who would one day confess to killing over 70 women. His name, Gary Leon Ridgway. And this is the chilling true story of America's most prolific serial killer. The early years. Who was Gary Ridgway? To understand how such evil can live inside an ordinary man, we need to go back to the beginning. Gary Ridgway was born on February 18, 1949, in Salt Lake City, Utah. He was the second of three sons in a deeply dysfunctional household. His father was a bus driver, quiet, angry, obsessed with stories about sex workers and violent crimes. He would often come home and talk to his sons about how disgusted he was by the women he saw on the street during his routes. Gary's mother, Mary, was controlling and harsh. She kept a tight grip on the house and on Gary himself. Some reports suggest she would bathe him well into his early teenage years. She was strict, sometimes cruel, and very dominant. As a child, Gary showed early signs of trouble. He wet the bed frequently, even into adolescence. He once stabbed a 6-year-old boy when he was just a teenager. The boy survived, but Gary told him later he just wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. He was also deeply affected by his mother's attitude. He both hated and felt drawn to her. That strange, twisted connection would stick with him for life. Ridgway's IQ tested low, around 80. He struggled in school, especially with reading and comprehension, but he eventually graduated and joined the Navy. While in the Navy, he served in Vietnam and reportedly spent much of his time with sex workers in Southeast Asia. It was during this time, many believe, that his rage toward women truly began to boil. When he returned home, he got married. It wouldn't last. His first wife left him after discovering his strange habits, like choking her during sex, insisting on public sex acts, and frequenting prostitutes behind her back. This pattern would repeat. He would remarry, get divorced, marry again. And in the background of it all, the killings would begin. The killing begins, the Green River. It started with a single body. On July 15, 1982, 16-year-old Wendy Caulfield was found in the Green River. Her body had been dumped there after she was strangled. Days later, 23-year-old Deborah Bonner was found in nearly the same spot. Then Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, and Cynthia Hines. All young, all sex workers or runaways, all found in or near the Green River. Police now knew they had a serial killer on their hands, but they had no clue who it was. The press quickly dubbed the unknown murderer the Green River Killer. Detectives formed a task force and began working around the clock. But this was the early 1980s. There was no DNA database, no modern surveillance, no way to connect the dots quickly. And Ridgway was smart. He worked as a truck painter for Kenworth, a heavy vehicle company. He had a steady job, showed up on time, never got in trouble, and he used that job to his advantage. He would often pick up sex workers near Seattle's Highway 99, an area known for prostitution. He'd offer them money, get them into his pickup truck, and drive them to isolated wooded areas, sometimes even his own home when his wife wasn't there. Once alone, he would kill them, quickly, usually by strangulation, often with a ligature, a shoelace, a belt, even their own clothing. Then he would dump the body, always near water, always in secluded spots, sometimes even returning days later to have sex with their corpses, something he would later admit in horrifying detail. Police struggle, no leads, no DNA, no arrest. As the months passed, the bodies piled up. By 1984, at least 40 women were believed to have been killed, but the killer left behind no fingerprints, no witnesses, no real evidence. The Green River Task Force grew frustrated. They interviewed hundreds of people, created a profile with the help of the FBI, even consulted with convicted killer Ted Bundy, who offered advice from his prison cell in Florida. Bundy told them the killer would likely return to the dump sites, that he'd revisit the bodies, that he might have a sexual obsession with corpses. He was right. And while Ridgway was actually interviewed in 1983, he passed a lie detector test. He was calm, polite, even helpful. Police had nothing solid to hold him on. They had no idea they had just spoken to the man responsible for dozens of murders. The killings slow down, but don't stop. By the late 1980s. The Green River killings seemed to slow down. But that didn't mean they stopped. Ridgway had simply gotten smarter. He started moving the bodies farther from the river, choosing victims who wouldn't be reported missing right away. Sometimes he even spread out the killings to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, he married for a third time. His new wife, Judith Mawson, had no idea what he was doing. She later said he treated her with kindness and never showed signs of violence at home. To her, he was a loving, quiet man. They even went on vacations together, had barbecues, laughed. All while Gary was hiding the truth. He was still killing. The DNA breakthrough. Science catches up, years passed. The case grew cold, but science didn't. By the late 1990s, DNA technology had advanced, and police decided to retest evidence from the original Green River crime scenes. In 2001, a cold case team pulled biological evidence, semen samples, from 3 victims. They ran them through the new DNA database. And finally, after nearly 20 years, they got a match. The DNA belonged to none other than Gary Ridgway. He was arrested on November 30th, 2001, outside the Kenworth plant where he had worked for years. The monster had finally been caught. The confession and the horrifying truth. After his arrest in 2001, Gary Ridgway did something that stunned detectives. He started talking, and not just about a few crimes. He gave them a number that would haunt them for years. He confessed to 48 murders. Later, in different statements, he claimed the real number was even higher, possibly over 70. Some investigators believe the total could have reached more than 90. The details he provided were deeply disturbing. Ridgway described how he chose his victims, many of whom were vulnerable young women living on the margins of society. He said he targeted people he believed would not be quickly missed or noticed by police. He often approached them in his truck, pretending to be friendly or offering them a ride. Once they were in an isolated location, he would end their lives quietly and efficiently, leaving little evidence behind. Afterward, he disposed of the victims in secluded areas near rivers, forests, or even shallow graves. His knowledge of the local area allowed him to move unnoticed. He often said he felt no remorse. In his own words, he considered himself helping the police by getting rid of people he believed were not contributing to society. These were deeply cruel and detached thoughts, a chilling glimpse into a mind without empathy. What shocked the investigators most was his calm tone. He described everything flatly, without emotion. For him, these weren't people with names and lives. They were numbers, cases, forgotten stories, and that made it even more terrifying. The trial, a deal with the devil. After Ridgway's full confession, prosecutors were faced with a difficult decision. They had DNA evidence linking him to just 4 murders, but Ridgway had now confessed to killing dozens. He even promised to help locate the bodies of those who had never been found. He remembered where he left them, even years later. That information was invaluable. So in 2003, the court made a controversial deal. If Ridgway told the full truth and helped find more victims, he would be spared the death penalty. Instead, he would spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance of parole. For the families of the victims, it was a hard pill to swallow. Many wanted justice in the harshest form, but others understood that the truth, the chance to know what happened to their loved ones, was worth more than seeing Ridgway sentenced to death. So he began talking. Day after day, detectives sat with Ridgway. He led them to remote sites, some deep in the woods, others near old highways or under bridges. In some cases, he remembered exact landmarks: a broken tree, a large stone, a curve in the road, where he had left a victim decades earlier. He gave names, dates, methods. It was a horrible map of pain. In court, he stood expressionless. On November 5th, 2003, Gary Ridgway pled guilty to 48 counts of murder. One by one, the names were read aloud. Women and girls aged between their teens and early 30s. Most had vanished between 1982 and 1998. Their families sat in the courtroom, many weeping, some trembling with anger. When asked if he had anything to say, Ridgway gave a brief statement. He said he was sorry, though many didn't believe he truly felt remorse. He said, "I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight. I wanted to kill as many as I could." His voice was cold, almost robotic. There were no outbursts, no shouting, no dramatic moments, just silence and pain. The sentencing, life behind bars. On December 18, 2003, Gary Ridgway was officially sentenced. The judge gave him 48 life sentences, one for each confirmed victim. And that wasn't all. He was also sentenced to 480 additional years in prison, 10 years for each victim he was convicted of tampering with after death. He was sent to Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, where he remains to this day. But the story doesn't end there. because Ridgway's confessions didn't stop. In 2011, remains of a 20-year-old woman named Rebecca Marrero, who went missing in 1982, were finally identified. Ridgway was charged with her death too, and received another life sentence in 2011. Over the years, bones and remains continued to be discovered in the woods around Seattle. Each one raised the same question: was this another of Gary Ridgway's victims? Even today, detectives believe there may still be more bodies out there. More stories that remain untold, lost in the silent forests of Washington. Trin inside his mind. Why did he do it? Many people have asked, what drove Gary Ridgway to kill so many? Psychologists, criminal profilers, and FBI experts studied him for years. And what they found was both disturbing and chillingly simple. Ridgway wasn't insane. He wasn't out of control. He was methodical, calculated, emotionless. He admitted to feeling rage toward women, especially those he viewed as unclean or immoral. These twisted views seem to have developed early in his life, likely shaped by his strict and confusing upbringing, especially his relationship with his mother. But unlike some other serial killers, Ridgway didn't seek headlines. He didn't crave fame or send taunting letters to the police. He wanted to be invisible. He blended in, worked a steady job, attended church, volunteered, mowed his lawn, smiled at neighbors. That's what made him so dangerous. He learned how to hide in plain sight, not by changing who he was, but by becoming exactly what people expected him to be: a quiet man, a reliable worker, a boring husband. Underneath that mask was a predator, one of the most dangerous in American history. The victims, never forgotten. There's one important truth we should never forget. This story is not just about a killer. It's about the women and girls whose lives were taken. Many of them had families, friends, dreams. Some were struggling, some were just trying to survive. But they were people, human beings who deserved better. In court, some family members stood up and faced Ridgway. One man whose daughter had been murdered told him directly, "There's going to be a time when you're going to answer to a power higher than us." Because Gary Ridgway didn't want the spotlight. He didn't want books or movies about him. He just wanted to keep killing. And the fact that he could do it for so long without getting caught, while smiling, while praying, while painting trucks and kissing his wife goodbye, is what makes his story so terrifying. If you found this story haunting but important, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you think of the Ridgway case and who we should cover next. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones you don't see coming.